Hey everybody, Sayre at Nova Motorcycles. This week we have a 1973 Triumph T100R Daytona, 500cc parallel twin. This is owned by a customer of ours who we're sort of working in tandem with. Hi, Carl. He's doing the paint work on it and having the tank and tins painted by a friend of his. We're doing all the mechanical restoration on it. So it's kind of fun to work like that. We love working, in tandem with customers who know what they're doing and like to get into stuff themselves. So this bike, the numbers say it's a 1973. The funny thing about Triumph at that time is that's when they were changing hands. The workers went on strike, locked out the management around 73, 74, and locked out the management for about a year and a half and still made bikes, which is a really cool episode in history of motorcycles, history of unions, history of trades. It's really, look into it. It's cool. But it made a mess of motorcycles. The parts books don't know what they are. So this thing says it's a 73. It has parts from 72 on it, has parts that were listed as 74 on it. So it's a bit of a game to kind of figure out what this thing's supposed to have on it. But welcome to English motorcycles. So this thing was a bike our customer bought. It's a 70, like I say, 73-ish. He bought it in 75, so almost from new. And he rode it for a while, put it away when the motor kind of got toasted, and it sat for a very long time. And so we've gone through everything on it. Had rusty everything, had a motor that was seized and needed a full rebuild. We'll get into that in a sec. But we have, thankfully, really good access to really good aftermarket parts for English bikes. So there's a brand spanking new headlight bucket with a brand spanking new wiring harness, cloth wrapped, original spec, looks just like the original one, positive ground, all the good English stuff. And then you can just buy it and you put it right in. It's so cool. There's better part support for this stuff than there is for newer Japanese stuff in a lot of ways. So that's one thing I really love about working on the old English stuff is the aftermarket support. So yeah, new wiring harness, new wheels. So these hubs are original, but the rims were shot, the spokes were rusted. So these are new stainless spokes from Buchanan's. These are new English-made steel chrome rims, replicas of the original. And the hub we just went through and cleaned it up, rebuilt the brake, painted it, lubed everything up, and put it all back together. New forks, new fork tubes, same fork lowers, but brand spanking new fork tubes, new gators, repainted triple tree, but new hardware, everything that's shiny we want to replace and make it look nice. New handlebars, we cleaned up the old switch gear on it, the old choke cable. We love these things. New electrical. We got new coils in here. So the idea is to try to make it as reliable as possible. While we're on electrical and reliable, interesting factoid: this little doozer up front here is called the Zener Diode, and we're not going to use this, but we're putting it on here because it's how they were. It's kind of cool. It's a heat sink basically. Well, the diode part is a simple diode, allows electricity to pass one direction only. Now the Zener Diode has a gateway voltage, a threshold voltage. So basically when it gets to about 13.5 volts of electricity in the diode, it lets it flow through, goes to ground. When it goes to ground, it turns to heat, and the heat gets dissipated by this. So this is a voltage regulator. We're taking it out of the system because there's a new aftermarket solid state one that works great, replaces the old rectifier, replaces this thing, and but we keep it on here for looks. It's a cool piece of motoring history, basically. So other than electrical and suspension-wise, new forks, we have new shocks in the back. The motor and transmission had a complete go-through. We pulled it apart. The head he had broken fins on it. He had already replaced the head once. So we had his old head. He had replaced it because it had a cracked valve seat. Now I took it and I tried to cut it to see if the valve seat, the crack was superficial or not. I got into it enough, and the crack keeps on going, so I don't think that can be saved. Basically, what happens when it cracks is the tension is lost, and it could just fall out under use. So we're not going to use that. So we found another replacement head, rebuilt it with new guides, recut the valve seats, new valves, all that jazz. So new head there. And the other thing that happens on English bikes, or any bike with an aluminum connecting rod in particular, but these Brit ones you want to be extra careful with because they're a little bit more fragile, let's say, than the later Japanese stuff or the German stuff. Is this hole here for it matches up the crank journal, gets oval. And that happens from wear, that happens from stretch. And once they're oval, they're garbage. You cannot use them again. If it's a steel conrod, it's normal for the conrod to get oval, and you can just re-hone it, use a different size shell bearing in there, all is good. But once the aluminum starts to go, that's your only warning you get. And after that, it's going to potentially just explode on you, or not explode, but come apart, put a nice hole in your crankcase, which is as good as an explosion. So again, great English aftermarket support. We can get these brand spanking new, made to this spec. Not cheap, sorry, Carl, but they're out there and they're good. So this is a crank up rebuild. New conrods in there, new bearings throughout, new bore, new pistons, new rings, as we said, new head, and then the transmission thankfully was in great shape. Went through there and just did all the bearings and seals in there, check specs on bushings and things like that. But it was pretty good, and the rest of the motor, not much more to it. Primary and clutch, new clutch plates in there, but reusing the alternator for now because it seems to be in good shape, and new primary chain, but nothing much crazy there. Yeah, so what we're doing right now is we're sort of waiting on our last round of parts ordering for this, and we're waiting for the paint work to get back from the painter that the customer is using. And once we have that, we will be able to button this thing up and run it. But the hard stuff is pretty much done. And so if you stay tuned, we're going to have a video of this thing running before too long. That's about it. Please like and subscribe on the channel. And also, time for our shameless publicity, shameless shilling. If you like my cool-ass Nova mug, you can buy it. We also have this calendar that we've made this year for the very first time. Got a bunch of different bikes from basically what's in what we call under our tent. This is bikes from the 60s through the 90s. And it's just a bunch of cool machines owned by people we know. Some of them are ours, some of them are friends, some of them are customers. And you can get them, order it quickly. We can still ship it to you in time for Christmas. So check it out, novamotorcycles.com. We have an internet store there, and we also have the store in the shop. Come on by.